Dear friends, welcome back to a new season of The Human Weave. I'm Yash,
And I'm Rosh.
and we are back with the Human Weave podcast, season 2. After that profoundly connecting journey through stories of connection in our season 1, we're excited to be.
This time with a bold new theme, breaking stereotypes. This season, we are taking a closer look at some of the universal stereotypes that shape our lives, often silently, often powerfully.
And we'll explore how breaking these stereotypes can spark change, opening up spaces for new beginnings that are more inclusive, compassionate, and truly human.
This is a place where we challenge the mainstream mindset and dive into stories of transformation, resilience, and people who are daring to defy the boxes they are put into. Today's change makers are not just breaking stereotypes, they are rebuilding the whole world. And in doing so, they invite us all to imagine a world where our differences aren't a problem, they are power. A place where being different is normalized. Welcome to the Human Weave, Breaking Stereotypes.
I think we should begin our understanding by a definition of what a stereotype is. To simply put it, a stereotype is a generalized belief or expectation about a group of people or on a thing, often based on a limited or inaccurate understanding of the characteristics. It is like putting people or things into boxes, uh, probably based on their gender, race, profession, age, or even the way they dress, without really knowing their individual stories.
Stereotypes often come from societal conditioning, media portrayals, and repeated narratives that get passed down without being questioned. And while some may seem harmless on the surface, they can shape our perceptions and limit how we see others and even how we see ourselves.
So, Rosh, what does stereotype mean to you?
I think it is kind of labeling things or people into a perception that is very commonly seen and overgeneralizing or oversimplifying the whole concept.
So, I've also been experiencing a couple of stereotypes in the environment that if you're doing X thing, you would be put and labeled as so and so, which might not really the case because every individual situation has a different story or behind the scenes attached to it, and generalizing might really not be apt for such situations. And it is causing more harm than good to any other individual involved in.
And I think, especially in the context of contemporary society, where as individuals we are more aware what we want, right? It is not just following a certain pattern of being or showing up or living your life. Everybody is experimenting, making their own mistakes, and coming up with a life that feels meaningful to themselves. So it might not always feel like they're conforming to a norm. Uh, but I also feel stereotypes are a typical way, right? Like your brain is used to seeing something so many times that you start believing it's almost like a trick played on your mind, where you start believing that is the only truth, which may not be the case.
Yeah, I think it is because of not questioning on something when it comes up, on understanding, okay, why do you do this pattern or what is happening really? Just following the pattern without knowing the pre-information of it can probably lead to this kind of conditioning, and then it gets passed on to generations without even having the information of why we do what we do. And then it becomes a stereotype where people follow it blindly, or people force them on somebody else also blindly.
Yeah. And I think in today's modern context, it is more relevant in the sense that we are given the narrative of each individual can be themselves. And when we say that, we are also saying that each person is going to bring their own imperfections or their own quirks, their own way of being, which might be very different from what we have seen. And we all have that. Earlier, that was kind of suppressed to fit into people around us accepting us. But today, with that narrative changing, I think more and more people are definitely becoming okay with breaking stereotypes. But I'm not sure I can say the same about people accepting different from normal.
Totally, that's a beautiful point. I think people who are breaking stereotypes, I see it as suppressed situations or emotions erupting after the threshold. So you live in some situations where you're always constantly suppressed, and there comes a point where you cannot bear it any longer, and then you'll be like, okay, let's do it, whatever happens, happens. And when it comes to accepting, I guess people don't see it with open eyes. So if I am this way, that's the only truth. That is how I've seen generally people consider the situations are. Even I was like that. I was no different. But with my work exposure, looking at different people, it has made me realize that there are elements, there are views other than mine also that does exist, which need not be right or wrong in the sense when you think it, they exist. What is yours, and what is others. Everybody cannot be the same like how I think, and it goes for other people also. So I think that is one thing that's not letting people accept because they're so rooted to their own thing. They resist to even look at different perspectives. You need not really accept the perspectives. You just have to be open minded enough to see those perspectives. You can just stay with your own perspective, but do see other perspectives as well.
Yeah, yeah. I do see where you're coming from, and I think somewhere or the other subconsciously we are constantly surrounded by stereotypes, right? Like we might not even realize this is a stereotype I believe in. It's just conditioned so much into you that it is probably something that jolts us, or when somebody questions us, that can even stop to think, I have taken this thing so much for granted that I didn't see that somebody could be different in this. I think that also happens, and it's a journey. The accepting part is definitely a journey. I don't think we could ever say that I never anymore have any stereotypes in my mind, because it's a natural way of the mind, right? To get used to having people a certain way, like even physical features, right? Like we used to somebody who has vision and can speak and can hear, can walk and use their hands. So even a physical difference can suddenly feel like, oh, this isn't normal, but it is normal. uh, and for that, you need to just stop, pause somewhere, and reflect in a way to let your mind open up to the idea that this is normal for someone else. Not for me, but someone else. And I can open my world to that normal also.
People have to start normalizing that there exist other normals too, and not their own normal.
Yeah. I remember we've spoken about this before, that growing up I felt like, I wanted to be similar to everybody else, but the choices I made felt like, always I was defying or being different. And at that point, because of lack of exposure also, there is a feeling you want to comply to everybody else, because you want to be liked. You don't want to constantly be under attack, somebody telling you why are you doing things differently, because you don't have an answer. Now I think that scenario has changed in a way where there is so much more exposure to information that I no more feel alone in being different. I can always find that tribe to make myself known, that it's okay to be myself, whichever way I am. Maybe I'm not accepted here for this, but there is someone, or there is a community, or there is a place where I am accepted just for being myself. That makes it a bit more easier also.
Yeah, that places two words strongly for me. One is comparison and judgment. From the childhood, if you recall your own childhood, when I recall my childhood, that your uniqueness is not really appreciated. You'll always be compared to people around you, saying, why are you not like them? If every other individual is appreciated for their own uniqueness, probably this won't happen for people. And that becomes normal from the childhood. There is always this constant fight with being unique and also trying to fit in. So you have to fit in because you have to be liked by others. You can't be unique because unique is defined as weird, being weird, and not unique as unique. And to all of these things, I think it comes with a judgment that this is right and this is wrong. If you're unique, that's wrong because you're being different and you're not like others. So the judgment is put into the minds from the very early stages. So no wonder that it becomes conditioning in decades.
Yeah. And then there are these unrealistic standards, as a society we kind of form, and that is very prevalent even today about beauty standards, right? How you look, the color of your skin, the type of body you have, the kind of clothes you wear. All these things have put a very standard image of beauty for women and for men. uh, or even things we see, right? Like, it's not even just people, it is about, I mean, when we got a rescue dog without actually seeing her, a lot of people said, oh, but did you not want a breed, because they are so cute. But even in a dog we have found that standard of what feels like a good pet. It's so much more pressure when it comes to us as human beings, that you need to look a certain way all the time. And we do hear about worldwide how this is affecting teenage population, young adults. There are people who take drastic measures to look a certain way, affect their health, and it's not talked enough, not talked openly enough to be addressed, to be overcome in a way. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. What people think that their perception is the only right way.
I do believe that a lot of times when we hold on to certain stereotypes, it is also coming from one, a place of fear of something that's different, something that's unknown. And secondly, like when we are talking about breeds, right? Like dogs that we own. Why are we stereotypical about the one we choose? It is also that you want to portray to the outside world a certain image about yourself. And for a lot of people, their image depends on external factors, how people are looking at them, and not how what they do, their actions, their thoughts, how that makes them feel is not the real point of concentration. They are kind of focused on that external camera, if I could put it that way, that is looking at them. And for example, if I have a German Shepherd, it makes me feel like somebody more powerful, right? Like a big dog walking with me when I go out. I think those kind of things can also play a very important role in why we hold on to certain ideas more dearly than others, why we don't want to break through. And we see it in different things, right? I just want to mention here some very common notions of stereotypes, right? Boys don't cry, girls should not laugh loudly, um, housewives and homemakers have nothing to do. They're just enjoying their lives and they're not educated. Men can't look after their children. They are not good caretakers when it comes to their own children. and that people with disabilities can't be independent. There are so many, right? Like these are very common things that we see. Gender based stereotypes are something very commonly perceived in the society across cultures globally.
Especially with men don't cry. I think it comes from a very small age. Recently, I was with a family for a small function, a very close family friend. So the kid was almost 2.5, and the mother was expressing to grandmother, saying that um, your grandson is behaving very nicely. He doesn't cry. So I was just witnessing the conversation, saying, okay, so does that put crying into the category of bad? So that was a little surprising to witness at the first hand on how it can really build up that conditioning for that kid in the future on what is good and what is not good. So if behaving without crying is good, then behaving with crying is bad.
When you're talking about this example, I can say that I'm guilty of certain things, that comes to my mind immediately, that my daughter would cry easily, and sometimes I wouldn't understand what was the reason she's crying, right? And I heard myself say again and again, don't cry without a reason, right? But I had not stopped in that moment to ask her what the reason is. I'm assuming there is no reason, and if there is no reason, you shouldn't be crying. It was probably a messaging I have heard a lot of times around me, and it is something that just naturally comes out, very instinctively comes out. But after I repeated that a few times, I kind of realized, I am playing this again and again. And what kind of a messaging am I giving my daughter here when I'm constantly telling her, don't cry without a reason? Is she supposed to sit and find a reason for her crying? Is she not allowed to just feel too overwhelmed and cry, or not knowing a reason really? So those are questions that came to my mind later on, but I'm sure there are so many things we still do, right? Like even if I find myself a bit, have put on a few kgs, or I feel a bit bloated today and the dress I'm wearing doesn't look good, I'm ready to change, and never satisfied standing in front of the mirror about how I look. I'm judging myself there based on the stereotypes that have been played to me again and again. And those kind of situations come to us very subconsciously, A lot of times we don't realize we are playing into it.
Totally. I can say now that we are little aware than before, but we still hold on to unconscious stereotypes, knowingly or unknowingly. I used to be very non-expressive. At least I'm better now to consider my own improvement or the evolution. If I have to look back, I was totally non-expressive, and that was actually supported. I am not that person, but it was the condition that was around me had put me into that space. That if you express, you're weak, and if you don't, you're strong. You're a strong girl, so you shouldn't cry. You shouldn't tell that. You shouldn't, yeah, you shouldn't say this, say that. Okay, let's consider that narrative itself. So if I'm a strong woman, that doesn't mean I have weak moments too. So I'm a human being first, which has all ups and downs. So what makes, especially with crying, no, if I'm overwhelmed or if I'm crying for n number of reasons, the only statement I used to utter, and I still hear, is, "Oh, you're a strong woman. You shouldn't cry for this." I never used to contemplate on it, just hearing it, but now I'm very dissociated with that. I hear it, I cannot stop them from saying, but I can just choose to respond on how I want to respond on. That has helped me to come out of my suppressed zone and be like, if I want to cry, I will cry. So if you're defining my strength on whether I'm crying or not crying, that's your perception. And I'm sure people will relate to it because this is very common stereotype that I've heard from people, not just for women, but also for men.
For sure. Yeah, it plays in so many different ways. And I'm also thinking, sometimes stereotypes are necessary in certain situations. Like, we don't call them stereotypes, but that normalization of things. Like, if I'm at a signal, traffic signal, green says go, red says stop. When we are generalizing or oversimplifying it like that, there it is a very helpful. Like, somewhere if we go and suddenly red means go and green means stop, it can become very chaotic. But as human beings, we have been gifted with that mind to stop, take that pause, very meaningfully, and try and see the situation, understand. If not able to understand, to stop and question it, ask the other person or ask around, look around to explore more. That is a gift we have been given. So I think we should take our space there to open our minds and look at things and people around us to accommodate those who are able to break those stereotypes, and how we can break those stereotypes.
And it comes with generalization in a very academic setting also. I was just recalling people saying, so if you have good scores, you just only have to go to science and tech. You cannot really get into the art or the commerce or some other sectors if you have really good scores. So where is this whole consideration coming from? Even arts and commerce people can be like good scorers. It's up to people to choose what they like rather than just having good scores. I can have my own example here. So I was suggested to get into technology because I had good scores in maths. But scoring good in maths need not make me contented about the work that I do in tech, which is exactly what happened with me. So stereotypes are in all different areas of life.
Yeah. Yeah, and globally, I mean, cultural aspects can bring in certain stereotypes which are very specific to cultures. But I think, as a very broader concept, it is there everywhere in our daily lives. It is about becoming more conscious and more accepting, because we do realize at this point that stereotypes are something that can limit dreams, limit what a person can be, what a person can do. If, as a woman, I want to become a motorcyclist, if my families or my friends are constantly telling me about how dangerous this is and it's not a woman's world, and I will be demotivated to pursue it until I have it inside me to defy others and go ahead. We were talking, I was having this conversation with my husband. He was telling me there's something about men and bikes. They naturally have this thing. So I said, I don't think so, because we know a lot of men who don't ride bikes at all. My father, for example, he never liked a two wheeler, So I do have examples of those men who really never associated themselves with the two wheeler. They thought of it as something dangerous, not adventurous. When we were growing up, we didn't have women around us who were riding a motorbike, right? Had we seen it, I think I would have aspired for it. I somewhere got conditioned to accept that that's not for me, that's for the boys, even without really sitting down and thinking about it. It never even crossed my mind. But there are women today who travel all over places on motorbikes. I mean, we're talking about women, but there are men who choose to become stay at home dads and look after their children, or can go on solo trips with their a small child. I have a friend who's done that, and it's amazing to hear those stories where people are ready to kind of break the norm, dream bigger, do things that not many people have done, right? And that takes, I think, most importantly, courage to stand up for yourself, for your thoughts, for your beliefs when people around you are disagree.
Also the colors, the gender colors, no? Blue and the pink. So even with the smallest kid, they're given choice. Pink is girls' color. Why would you want to go get into girls' color? Why not blue, which is boys? Contrary, girls do wear both. Why is it restricted? Is also a kind of stereotype that blue is for boys and pink is for girls. And that is how this gender reveal parties or gender reveal things also happen. So, what are your thoughts on that? Does it really matter with the color?
Of course not. We tend to assign colors. So that's why, stereotypes are not just about people. It's about things, it's about abstract ideas sometimes. We even assign colors to religions today. And then that color is associated with only that religion, which is so not true, right? Like, that color can be associated with so many things. Colors are such beautiful things that we have in our world. It comes from nature, to be honest, and it's nobody's to possess. When you're talking about gender assigned colors, we even forget about the third gender, or the other gender, people who don't define themselves as a woman or a man. We're completely dismissing them when we're saying pink is for girls, blue is for boys. Then what does that mean for anybody who doesn't define themselves as a boy or a girl? What if my boy, being a boy, loves pink? Am I supposed to stop him from liking pink so that others don't tease him or he doesn't get bullied? These are things, I think, somewhere we need to stop and think. That's where we were saying, subconsciously it is there in so many places, right? When we say that, oh, healthy food means Indian food in Indian context, right? But doesn't mean the rest of the world is having unhealthy food. It is not understanding enough about what we consider the other, opening our minds to new knowledge, something we don't understand. What can we do in those moments? Because when somebody is breaking a stereotype, I also believe they are creating a new prototype, right? It's not about breaking the norm, but also creating something new for other people to follow, for other people to look up to, where they have felt this themselves, but not raised um, themselves to break that stereotype because of fear of being judged or disliked or whatever. But then there are those people who go ahead and break those stereotypes, and they've created that new prototype for others to follow. And we do see so many change makers today worldwide in different fields, where we see these examples of people who have and are creating new prototypes.
I think it all comes down to, again, the individual associations. What I might associate as whether it is color, position, roles, or any definitions. When you're saying about healthy and other, what is healthy to my body nature might not be healthy to somebody else. And it depends on so many variables: the place you reside in, the environment, the weather conditions, so many factors. So, what healthy to me right now in this place might not be the same healthy that I define in some other destination that I might live in. So, considering our home away from home episode, if you're traveling constantly, crossing continents, what you can have as food in one continent cannot be the same that your body will associate when you go to another country. So if I don't like hot food here, if I go to a snowy place, I might crave hot food. because of my own bodily response of keeping myself warm. So it again comes to the individual perspective. What is that every individual associate themselves to? In regard to any aspect for that matter, may not be just the food. It is also about how they want to live in or how practical that might sound for them to have all the options. And nobody has a real right to decide what is right and wrong for another person.
And I feel somewhere art plays such an important art and literature plays such an important role in opening our eyes to new realities. For me personally, I think books were the literature I read in my younger days were very, very influential in opening my eyes to the world I hadn't seen, to know that there is a world that exists which is like that. I remember I was still in my teenage when I was exposed to Virginia Woolf, a writer from Britain, who had written an essay on feminist ideas. And I was so fascinated that in those days, and she wrote in late 1800s and early 1800s, and that time men were the people who were writing literary stuff. Women weren't openly allowed or appreciated when they wrote, and she broke that norm. It must have been difficult, but look at where we have come from in the next 100 years, right? And she created that prototype. So many characters. I remember reading, there was a play, an Indian play by Vijay Tendulkar called Silence the Courtesan Session, where there was a character, Miss Benare, who was condemned to have a child out of wedlock. And they do this mock court session, but the punishment that she is met with is very real. How they judge her and pass a judgment in the end about how boisterous she is, or she talks too much to men, or those labels that we were talking about. And I think these were characters that came alive for me as a woman, a young woman in those days, through literature. I think even in our mythology, for that matter, right, when women were usually subdued, never spoke back. We had a Draupadi who would laugh at elders, or challenge when she was humiliated in a court. She could challenge the Kauravas in a full court, So you've seen those very strong characters, and then you believe, that this is not something new. Breaking stereotypes is something that has always existed, right? Even Shikandi's character in Mahabharata, born a woman but fought the war as a man. Such an ancient epic, and that had more acceptance to a character like that. And we see so many people kind of condemning a person who they are not able to understand as a man or a woman. So I think there are places we can look for if we really want to understand better. What's your take on that?
Yeah, okay, open-mindedness, right? So you should be willing to put yourself into the places where you can get exposed to such situations or stories or conversations to even see the world on the other side than what you've been living in. If you just live in with your own world that you've created around, which is good, which is completely acceptable to live on your own in that small world, that doesn't mean you have to not see the world outside. I think that's what I really experience with the conversations I have with my clients. Story, every life situation they bring in need not be experienced by me. I have a different world that I live in, and they live in a different world. And I get to see that through the door of conversation. And if people can do that, just hear stories of other people and put in their shoes your own life, probably there will be more openness and acceptance for people, and world will be more kinder to people, and human beings can be human beings.
I think certainly that's a very important and a very big point you brought in there, that when you break stereotypes, when you accept people who break stereotypes, when you break the stereotypes in your mind, I think you are taking a step towards kindness. And that is something that we don't really talk a lot about. You know, the moment we start me and the other, us and them, I think we are making our world smaller in a way. The moment you are ready to expand, growth is expansion, right? Growth is always, it's moving outwards from within to the outside. And if you are able to do that, I think it's a very strong metaphor for sky is your limit. You can just keep expanding. There is no limit to how much open minded you can be, but there's a limit to how close minded you can be. um, and it's a choice each of us makes in our everyday lives, in every situations we experience. Are we ready to take that one step towards kindness by accepting people, their decisions, things, associations, symbols, metaphors, everything with an eye of expansion?
Yeah, the word choice is very strong. Life is all about what you choose, and you're made of your choices. So I think we can give that word to our listeners, saying you can choose what you want to choose for your own self. Also, the opinions, right? Whatever we share is from our own experiences, and not everybody can relate it. And it's again the choice. Choose what you align with, take it forward. If you don't have the alignment, feel free to choose to let it go. Not every opinion has to really align with every other individual.
Yeah, yeah. uh, I really enjoy this. At some point I had heard this quote which always stayed with me, that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And it is such a profound statement if you look at it, that just because somebody is a saint today doesn't mean that that person could not have made mistakes, have not done things they regretted at that point, or harmed somebody. They would have. But they evolved to become a saint today. And just because today somebody is doing something wrong doesn't mean that they don't have a future. There is hope for reformation or change. And that I think is such a beautiful quote in this particular context, also, that, you know, you cannot put anything in a box, you cannot label something forever in a certain way and leave it. It doesn't work like that. It's nature to change.
Yeah, when you say you cannot really generalize with regard to emotions or people for that matter, you always put considerations that this is how it is for me. I'm always unlucky. I'm always sad. Again, the labels with respect to emotions also. Is it really the case? We don't dig deeper.
Yeah, I've shared this with you before too. I have kind of been on this journey. I want to trust people. And it's not like I haven't been betrayed by certain people, but I am very conscious through the pain, through the hurt, that I don't want to hold on to those people who hurt me. But I want to remember all those beautiful people who have shown me love, who have shown me respect. And if I had to count, definitely the number is much more on the positive side. It's just that we tend to remember uh, the negative more. So somewhere I feel, even from our previous season episodes, there is so much that is coming in here when we are talking. When we were talking about connection, what holds us back from connecting can be a lot of stereotypes in our mind.
I was reading something about the negatives and the positives, research article. And it said negatives are easier because that's the natural instinct. But the positives has to be induced, has to be chosen to focus at. And that stuck my mind like anything, that it is so true. That's where we need to really do the conditioning, do the rewiring on the other end. We are wired to always see the negatives. So if we can rewire it to see the positives, probably that becomes our natural instincts down the line. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but down the line it does.
Yeah. I mean, that brings me to two words, always and never. These are such integral words to stereotypes. The moment we are able to remove that, I think you open a new door. Because even with positive, negative, right? There can be positive stereotypes which are harmful. For example, a mother is a superhuman. She's a superwoman, she can do anything. It's not true. I'm a mother. Have my days when I just, want to just put down every responsibility I have and just sit and want somebody to come and take care of me. I'm not able to be that superwoman I have told myself I am, and what others around me have been telling me I am. But there are days when I'm not even able to do simple responsibilities. I'm too tired. I'm overwhelmed. I'm emotionally drained. I'm human. So sometimes stereotypes can show up as a very positive, like a compliment, but it can have very subtle boxing or labeling in it, which can be very pressurizing, which can bring a person down, or bring others around them down. You have to keep up then to that positive image all the time, which is also very overwhelming. It's important to recognize that even positive negative can be a stereotype.
So, mother is a Wonder Woman is one aspect, and always have to be that Wonder Woman is another. You can consider yourself as Wonder Woman to have that positivity or your internal inspiration, but you have to also accept that if I'm not in some moments, and that's okay too.
Yeah, it's okay to be human.
Yeah, totally. You cannot be 100% all the time. If that is how we have to be, we will become robots and not human beings. We have our energies up some days and we have our energies down some days, and it's completely normal. That's what makes it balanced life.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. We have talked about all these points, what stereotypes mean, what breaking that means, and also how it feels to be on the side where you have to accept what is not normal in your eyes. I think to take that step forward, it is very important to teach our children, to teach the youth, to challenge, to question, um, and explore. I think these three things was not the norm, or even our educational system never encouraged these, challenging and questioning kind of an education before. But now that is slowly changing. When we were talking about teachers in the previous season, also we saw that, right? Like how education has changed today. And I think that is a good way to kind of inculcate that open mindedness in the coming generations, that they are able to question. They're not afraid, because, like we saw when we talked about this, that there is that fear that makes you conform, makes you stick or stay in that box. Your dreams, who you are, to attain that full potential of who you are, you need to break through that glass ceiling. You need to come out of that box and explore, question, challenge. And that is something I think we should encourage more and more in the coming generations.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it is slowly changing where Students are encouraged to question on the statements that can come in their own academics or with their own life. And the current generation that's in the era of technology, there's a great evolution. So I'm sure it's going to go better in the future also.
Yeah, and we are here breaking certain stereotypes, partnering together across kilometers away and never having met in person yet. But here we are doing an episode on breaking stereotypes together, doing this Human Weave podcast, dreaming big. And I think it has been possible. Our own journeys have been possible because we have somewhere wanted to open our minds, wanted to see more than we have seen, accept more than what we have already accepted.
Yeah, also breaking our own stereotypes that probably we cannot do podcasts.
Or come on a video camera and talk. So, in today's introductory episode to the season Breaking Stereotypes, we want to leave you with two simple questions. What is one stereotype you have unknowingly carried about yourself or others that you've never questioned until now? The other one is, can you recall a moment when someone surprised you by breaking a stereotype you believed in? How did that shift your perspective? These questions are something that can help you challenge and break through certain beliefs or perceptions that you have carried. I hope you are able to treat these reflective questions as that.
Dear friends, as you know by now, we ask reflective questions, not just for you to listen to these episodes, but to pause, reflect, and connect more deeply with your own thoughts and perspectives. We truly believe that these reflective pauses nurture your clarity, insights, and meaning on your own personal journey. We hope this introductory episode on breaking stereotypes has opened up a space within you, a space to notice how often stereotypes show up in our daily lives and perhaps even begin to reframe some of them. Maybe it nudges you to be more open, more accepting of those who are different from what you're used to seeing or understanding.
Coming up next, we are bringing you a truly insightful episode where we'll explore stereotypes through a psychological lens, peeling back the layers and diving deeper into what it means to break free from limiting narratives. There are so many interesting episodes lined up in this season, so don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned to the Human Weave. Until then, it's goodbye from your hosts, Yash and Rosh. Stay connected, stay curious.